Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're plunging straight into a literary mystery that absolutely shocked 1891 Victorian society. We're looking at Thomas Hardy's classic novel, Tess of the D'Urbervilles. Now, if you think 19th century literature is just quiet tea parties and polite, stuffy conversation, well, prepare to have your mind changed. This book was considered incredibly scandalous, dangerous, and deeply subversive when it first hit the shelves. We're going to unpack exactly why this story of an impoverished dairymaid was so threatening to the status quo, and how Hardy used her tragic life to basically put an entire society on trial.
Okay, let's dive into this. Thomas Hardy insisted on adding a highly provocative subtitle to the novel, "A Pure Woman Faithfully Presented." Now, this single phrase caused massive outrage among the Victorian purity movement. You see, back then, in the eyes of Victorian high society, a woman who had a child out of wedlock, regardless of the circumstances, was permanently branded a fallen woman. There was no coming back from it. But Hardy boldly slaps this subtitle right on the cover, openly challenging his readers. He was declaring that Tess's essential purity survived everything that was forced upon her. It was a direct, unapologetic attack on the wildly hypocritical moral standards of the day.
And you better believe the backlash was severe. Influential publications like the Quarterly Review attacked the book, calling it coarse and disagreeable. But the pushback actually started way before it even hit the shelves. Editors were so terrified of the reading public's prudery that they forced Hardy to heavily censor his own manuscript just to get it serialized in magazines. I mean, he had to completely remove the pivotal dark scene in the chase forest where Tess is sexually assaulted. He even had to cut a heartbreaking scene where Tess, totally desperate to save her dying baby's soul, performs a makeshift baptism herself. The establishment simply couldn't stomach Hardy's unvarnished truth.
Section 1. A Lineage of Doom, the Precarious Precipice of Poverty.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that to truly understand this novel, we have to recognize that Tess's tragic story isn't just a series of bad personal choices. It's a devastating collision with a completely rigged social and economic system. What's staggering is this number, 6 million acres. During the late 19th century, nearly 6 million acres of agricultural property changed hands in England. The old, landed, aristocratic families, like Tess's true ancestors, the D'Urbervilles, were losing their wealth and influence, selling off their massive estates. In their place came wealthy middle-class merchants buying up land and literally buying ancient family names just to sound prestigious. This macroeconomic shift is the very engine of the plot. Tess's family is destitute, yet they possess this ancient noble bloodline. Meanwhile, the rich family that she sent to claim kinship with, they simply bought the D'Urberville name with merchant money. So let's look at what this meant for someone like Tess on the ground. The rural reality for women was, in a word, brutal. The 1861 census recorded only 1% of the English labor force as female. As farming shifted to become more large-scale and mechanized, farm wages stayed drastically low. This meant a woman's supplemental income became absolutely vital for her family to simply not starve. Tess's family is barely clinging to survival, and their entire livelihood rests entirely on the back of their one workhorse, Prince. When Tess accidentally causes a collision that kills Prince, an incident Hardy actually based on a real report from the Dorset County Chronicle, by the way, her family is ruined. It's the sheer, unavoidable economic desperation that forces her straight into the path of her abuser. Section 2. The Predator and the Idealist. Two Sides of Destruction. And this brilliantly illustrates the two men who essentially sealed Tess's tragic fate, destroying her life in completely different yet equally devastating ways. First up, we have Alec d'Urberville. He is the sensualist predator. He uses his wealth and power to exploit Tess's economic desperation, viewing her as mere physical property to toil with and conquer. On the flip side, we have Angel Clare. He's the educated, free-thinking idealist. But his flaw is just as fatal. He doesn't love the real human Tess. Actually, scratch that. It's more like he loves an abstract, perfectly pure moral symbol that he has projected onto her. When she fails to live up to that completely impossible fantasy, his idealistic love instantly evaporates into cold, hard cruelty. The sheer hypocrisy of Angel's rejection is deeply rooted in the Victorian double standard. Let's look at how the system was rigged. Legally, the 1857 divorce laws made it remarkably easy for a man to divorce his wife for adultery, but practically impossible for a woman to do the same to her husband. Societally, men's sexual indiscretions were just quietly swept under the rug. In the novel, Angel confesses to Tess on their wedding night about his own reckless 48-hour affair with a stranger in London. Tess, possessing a truly pure and forgiving heart, instantly pardons him. But when she responds by sharing her own history of being assaulted by Alec, Angel completely rejects her. For a man, a loss of purity was a youthful indiscretion.
For a woman like Tess, she was, as Angel cruelly tells her, suddenly another woman in your shape. Section 3, a changing, cruel landscape. The modern machine. Now, the men aren't the only forces working against Tess. The environment itself acts as a massive force of cosmic and economic indifference. We can see this vividly by contrasting two key locations that mirror Tess's internal world. When Tess thinks she's finally found love and redemption, she is at Talbothays Dairy. It's a lush, green valley defined by gentle hand-milking and communal harmony. It represents this idyllic, older version of rural England. But after Angel abandons her, she is forced to work at Flintcombe Ash. Here, the ground is like frozen iron. More importantly, this is where she's forced to work alongside a screaming steam threshing machine. Hardy uses this terrifying, relentless machine to symbolize the harshness of industrial modernity. The mechanical cruelty of that threshing machine perfectly mirrors the mechanical, unfeeling cruelty of the society that is slowly grinding Tess down to nothing. Section 4. The woman pays. A map of tragedy. Let's move to this timeline and see how this builds. I want you to act as a jury for a moment as we trace the sequence of events leading to Tess's ultimate demise. Ask yourself, at what point is she truly to blame? It all starts with one night and a fatal economic accident, the death of the family horse. That single event forces her to Alex's estate, leading directly to her assault in the foggy woods of the Chase. Years later, her honest confession on her wedding night results in abandonment, plunging her right back into extreme poverty. When her father dies and her family faces starvation and eviction, Alec returns. He uses her family's sheer destitution to finally break her will and force her to become his mistress. And when Angel returns, way too late, the psychological snap leads to the desperate murder of Alec, and ultimately her haunting dawn arrest at Stonehenge. It is a perfectly linked chain reaction of systemic oppression. Section 5. Hardy's ultimate indictment. Judging by the will. So the crucial point is that Hardy wasn't just writing a sad story. He was writing a philosophical manifesto about how we judge one another. Hardy argues that in a world where blind chance and unfair social forces dictate so much of our lives, judging someone purely by their external deeds is a profound moral failure. We have to judge people by their internal will and their intentions. This is the concept of constructive judgment. While wasting away in Brazil, Angel Clare finally has this realization. He realizes he should have judged Tess constructively by her pure will and loving intentions rather than biographically by her forced circumstances. But tragically, his realization comes much, much too late to save her. And that tragedy culminates in one of the most famous and frankly bitter concluding lines in all of English literature. Quote, "Justice was done, and the president of the immortals had ended his sport with Tess." Notice how Hardy puts the word justice in sarcastic quotes? That's because there is absolutely nothing just about her fate. Also, notice how he doesn't describe the execution itself, just the black flag raising above the prison. As it turns out, Hardy had witnessed the real-life hanging of a woman named Martha Brown years earlier. The trauma of that gruesome spectacle haunted him so deeply that he refused to put his beloved character Tess through a vividly described execution out of sheer pity. We'll leave you with this final thought. Tess's story was published over 130 years ago, designed to hold up a mirror to a profoundly hypocritical society that punished the innocent victims of systemic power and economic disparity. But looking at the world today, we really have to ask ourselves, have we truly moved past the moral double standards that condemned her? It's a provocative question for sure, and one that ensures Hardy's masterpiece remains just as vital and challenging today as it was in 1891. Thanks for joining us for this explainer, and keep questioning the narrative.